Welcome to the Everyman Commentary podcast. I'm your host, Auguste and Evan, the founding editor of the Everyman. And I'm joined again by my co-host, Evan McClanahan, a senior contributor to the Everyman and host of the podcast, Theology on Air. Today, we are finally going to get to the news of the past 2 weeks. As you can imagine, most of it is connected to the horrific assassination of Charlie Kirk, which happened last week. To be honest, I'm still pretty shaken up by the whole thing, and I think Evan is too. Charlie Kirk was truly the icon of the MAGA movement, and far and away the best of us. He had a popular podcast, spoke and debated on college campuses, wrote books. He was the first to really define MAGA as a coherent movement, advised politicians, including President Trump, led a nationwide political organization, Turning Point USA, and personally knew pretty much everyone in the federal government. He was also a loving husband and father, a devout Christian, and an advocate for young people. And he was able to do all these things at 31 years old. I'll leave it at that because there's much better eulogies and tributes to Charlie Kirk that you can find anywhere. Just know that his impact was huge and we are all pretty much devastated by his death. What I wanted our conversation to focus on today is the aftermath. All Americans are dealing with Kirk's murder in culturally and politically significant ways. The left is going bananas and becoming even more unhinged. The right is getting angry and embracing cancel culture. All of us are waiting to see what Trump and his people, Pam Bondi, Kash Patel, and all the others will do. We are all wanting to see what comes of the investigation. Who was working with Kirk's murderer, Tyler Robinson? Will we ever know the full truth? And what will become of Kirk's work? Naturally, there are even more questions besides these. Something definitely needs to happen. And I think our biggest fear is that all this kind of gets forgotten and we return back to an unsustainable status quo. So that's my intro to the whole thing. Let's get Evan's take on all this. First, I'll just ask a pretty basic question, Evan. How are you feeling these days?
Well, a week and a half or so later, I'm still really, like you said, I'm very sad about it. It's like they did that to my friend, my good friend. He felt like a good friend. Obviously, I didn't know him. But yeah, felt like he was a friend, like a brother, and a lot of people felt that way about him, and it was totally evil, and I'm mad about it and sad about it. But I am also kind of starting to get, I think, as a lot of people are on the other side, where we're realizing how big of an impact he was. I mean, I didn't realize that he had over 15 billion social media views, and that's going to increase. That's going to keep going. I think there's still material that he wrote, and there's still a lot that he recorded that's still going to get out. I think we'll talk about this later, but I think Turning Point is in good hands, and I think that this is going to shape politics in a good way for the conservative movement. Not to be cynical about it, but in a good way. I mean, if you just look at the number of people applying for Turning Point chapters, it's like 60 something thousand, and his life's goal was like 20,000. So sometimes in life, as awful as it is, it takes something like this for action to take place. You need a driving force. You need an impetus for something to happen, and something has to shake up the status quo. And this might sound blasphemous, but I do think a lot about the death of Jesus, and I'm not saying Charlie was Jesus or anything like that, but he was not as innocent as Jesus, but as human beings go, he was about as innocent as one can be. He didn't curse, he didn't drink, he was respectful to everyone, he was kind, he was forgiving, he was generous. I mean, everyone has the best things to say about him. So it's, he wasn't one of these like guys who's like, well, it's sad. He was a power force, but I didn't like him. No, we loved him actually. So, but sometimes it takes something that cruel to open our mind and to, kind of take, go to the next place, which is, all right, how do we use something this awful and turn it for good? So I'm starting to see a lot of possibilities that wouldn't have been possible otherwise. And I wouldn't trade the situation, but given what it is, and given what we have been talking about recently, I mean, even on our last episode, like our country needs very real change. I think we're on the precipice. And your article that you wrote today in Stream, about kind of What do we do? Do we become more radical? Is radicalization inevitable? How do we get out of this?
Yeah.
I think this event is going to end up being a turning point for, our path forward. And ultimately, I think it's going to be positive because of who he was, because he was a Christian, because he, unlike the Rush Limbaughs of the world, he seamlessly interwove his Christian faith with his political and cultural worldview. And he totally trailblazed in that way. He broke ground in that way. And I think that's the path forward. I think the conservative movement is now a lot more wedded to Christian thought than it ever was before, and not just Judeo-Christian thought, but Christian thought.
Yeah.
And which is why someone like Ben Shapiro can't take Charlie's place. So anyway, that's a whole other thing. But so I'm starting to see some optimism and hope. I'm seeing a lot of passion. I'm seeing people coming back to faith. I'm seeing people signing up for Turning Point USA. And I'm just seeing a lot of love for Charlie. And I think, a lot of broken hearts, but I think we're going to make something good of it.
Yeah, I think the personal nature of his death, I think, surprised us all.
Yeah.
Because, like you know, oh, I think you probably followed him closer than I did, but I did follow. I listened to his interviews and I liked his podcast. But it just hits you in the gut, hits you in the heart. And I mean, deaths happen and tragedies happen, but Charlie was, yeah, he was like a little brother that just did everything right.
Yeah.
I think it was just
But
like,
like
well,
you weren't
and you're
annoyed
proud
by it.
of him. I don't know. It's like, well, I have no place to be proud of here. I mean, but I
Right.
felt proud of him, and
Yeah.
he had a generous nature,
Yeah.
which when you do kind of freelance writing and you work with other people, there's some competitiveness and caginess from other writers, and editors aren't always the nicest people. But Charlie Kirk was very generous. I think he wanted to really be inclusive. I think he wanted to expand the movement. He had a bigger vision, and he wasn't fearful of people, taking his share of the audience or something like that.
Right.
And so you could never feel jealous of him.
Right.
What's weird to me is when you do have, there are a few, most people I think were just aware that Kirk just really expanded the conservative audience and really got these ideas into public discourse. But there's some people, again, they're kind of more marginal and on the fringes. They'll say little, to me, tacky things about Charlie Kirk, or that he was too moderate or too milquetoast, too nice. Um, and I mean, and you could just hear the jealousy, and it's like I cannot feel jealous of this guy. I mean, I think it's incredible that he's able to do all these things in his 20s.
Yeah.
Just a young guy like that, just organizing, speaking, writing, and just having these types of insights. Like, I mean, I really do think he had a kind of genius
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
see kind of the MAGA movement before it really came to be, and got on that train very, very early. But so I'm with you. But yeah, this the personal nature of his departure, and then I think the fact that you really can't envy him, or it's just like you're just proud of him. I
Yeah.
mean, and that's a very interesting feeling to inspire
Right.
as kind of an influencer, kind of spokesperson.
Right.
So I agree with you too. I think out of his death is going to come new life. I mean, so there is a very much a Jesus parallel there. Um, and that's fine. I mean, we're supposed to be Christ-like, so I don't think it's blasphemous or inappropriate to kind of draw these parallels. I think that's what he was going for too, and that's great. And again, more evidence of a very generous kind of soul. So let's move on. Well, I don't move on. Let's kind of go deeper, I
Yeah.
should say. Let's talk about the investigation. So, because there are a lot of strands to come out of this. I mean, there's the tragedy itself, but now you're asking questions like, well, who did this? How did this happen? How are people reacting and all that? Because that's really what's getting the attention now. I'll start with the investigation itself. So where are we? Where are we with this? Because here's what I can say so far. And maybe you've read more, but we know Tyler Robinson, the shooter, was a queer man. I mean, gay or into trans people. He was involved with his roommate who was another man, but he was trying to identify as a woman. We know that he was brainwashed with leftist Antifa propaganda and furry porn. And we know he was most definitely a leftist who sympathized with Antifa and may have even been a card carrying member of Antifa. So I want to know. I don't think he's agreed to say anything. I mean, he's in custody, but he's exercising his Fifth Amendment or whatever. He's not cooperating. But I don't think there's any way this is just he did this on his own and just on his own initiative. I think there had to be some coordination going on. Someone giving him the calendar, someone telling him, okay, here's where you can do it. I mean, and I think that there's been a lot of them because they kind of released the text between him and his boyfriend, and it just seems very much. Well, I think Matt Walsh went over it, but it doesn't seem very natural. It seems like this was fabricated. Also, that we can think that this guy did it on his own and he had no accomplices. But in all reality, the dude probably had some accomplices. Where are we with this, and what do you think?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I agree with that the text message seems contrived. It seems like Matt Walsh actually compared it to the one of the last scenes, I guess, in Breaking Bad when Walter White has an explicit conversation with his wife where she picks up on the fact that he is saying things that will exonerate her, right? So that even though she was complicit in his crime, he's taking all the blame for it so that she can go on to live a life after he's dead or arrested or whatever. And
Oh, okay. Yeah.
there's a theory that that is what that conversation was, that it was an agreed upon conversation that would exonerate him, the furry boyfriend. And so I, I'd like to see more pressure applied. I mean, the FBI says they're looking into all these queer, violence groups, and Antifa networks and things like that. So I think I'm just going to let that play out. I would be curious to know when Charlie Kirk published the schedule. So how long did he know? He didn't go to school there, and yet he knew how to get on top of a roof. That's interesting. There's there's a screwdriver they found with his DNA on the roof. Now, I don't know a lot about guns and shooting, but I'm pretty sure you use a screwdriver in that situation to either put two parts of a rifle together or to sight in your sight, which
Hmm.
tells me, man, that was a really good shot. Charlie was wearing a bulletproof vest that day. Um,
Really?
yeah, under a shirt was a bulletproof vest. So I mean, he basically had a pretty, even though 200 yards isn't that far for a rifle. I mean, that's a pretty good shot, I would say. Because it was a
Well, it looks like he was going for the head, and then it just kind of
yeah.
got to the neck. And
So
I mean, that's
I
what I've
mean,
read.
I don't know. At the same time, only Megyn Kelly has alluded to the fact that this guy might be somewhere on the spectrum. Because if you look at some of his videos, he's kind of like not engaged. Like there's kind of like a blank stare. There's kind of like an awkwardness about him. He's obviously very intelligent, but he's also
Yeah.
the sort of person that could get recruited into far left. I mean, this is what we know about a lot of transgender people. The transgender
Yeah.
movement preys on people on the spectrum because there's an emotional disconnect there, and they believe that they're not transgender. It's kind of like they're not transgender; they're just autistic. So there's like the autistic community, and just like the gay community is saying, you're taking our people from our community by blaming their emotional situation or their attraction to men or whatever on their being trans. They're not trans; they're just autistic or something like that. So
Yeah.
I would be curious to know what's going on there. I mean, I don't think he's smart, but there's obviously, I think, an emotional disconnect there. I'm I guess this doesn't sound weird. I'm happy for him to be the single shooter, but I think that I would want to. It seems like yes, there's a network. There were people predicting what would happen. Charlie Kirk was going to be vaporized. They said there were other
Hmm.
trans people saying, "Keep your eye out on tomorrow. What's going to happen to Charlie Kirk?" People seem to know, and I think they should all get rolled up to the fullest extent of the law. Uh, and we need a swift death penalty. I mean, I know I'm not the first to say that, but I think that needs to happen. Don't allow them to plead. I don't know why, if someone pleads guilty, they get a less. I mean, I know why practically, but seems crazy that they shouldn't still get the full extent of the law. So I, I think that what the bigger kind of question is, what do we do with the left, right? Not
Yeah.
not liberalism, Okay, not tax policy disputes, not socialized healthcare disputes, not size of government or national debt disputes. What do we do with the left at this point? What percentage of America is in some leftist category where grievance politics and identity politics are their politics, right? There's no reasoning about it. They're not interested in reading Milton Friedman. They're not interested in making America great. It's basically, you don't affirm this about me or my victim status. Well, now I can justify violence against you. What percentage of Americans are in that sense? Or what percentage of Americans are just basically nihilists who don't care about violence, who don't care about harming other people? I think it's a very high percentage. I mean, given how horrible that is, 20%, something like that. Um, so
Well,
that's my, I have some prescriptions, but it's like, what do we do with the American left at this point, if this is what they are?
I think your point about Tyler Robinson being possibly autistic is interesting. And I think it needs to be better known for people that people who get into transgenderism, that have gender dysphoria, are usually on the spectrum. And they are very vulnerable to this kind of influence that you get through a scrolling platform like TikTok or Instagram or these message boards. And
And
that would
videos.
actually make sense of some of the motivations, just like, because you're wondering, like, how does a person get brainwashed like that? Well, I mean, some people are more prone to it than others. Um, and when we're talking about people that really get caught up in the transgender cult, they usually already have like some issues, right?
Mhm.
So I think that's important to understand. Just like, when we're talking about transgenderism and adopting this kind of lifestyle and belief system and perception of reality, a lot of these people are already kind of compromised on some level. And then technology and the propaganda added to it just kind of creates this radicalized person. Uh, to your point about, I mean, there are a lot of disturbing parallels with this assassination and then the Butler situation, where again you have just some patsy looking person, just some white young guy, and super duper radicalized, gets on a roof, seems to be trained to do this, and takes a shot at an important figure. So in Butler, it was Trump, who managed to just turn his head a little bit and look at some immigration stats or something. So, and we still don't have any answers on Butler. And, and I've kind of lost hope that we're ever going to find out who was behind that, how that was coordinated, what Secret Service was doing, how this information got to whatever network, whatever group that could coordinate that kind of attack. And then, and I feel like there's so many parallels, there's so many commonalities with this attack. And you might be right. I think maybe he's fabricating these types of conversations just to cut off all the connections he might have to an accomplice. But then, how would he even know to do that? I mean, I know the guy's smart, but scoring high on your ACT doesn't necessarily train you to
Yeah.
pull off these types of crimes. And well, and I think to your bigger point about the left. So, and maybe this is an obvious kind of realization, but in my mind, because I've been writing about it and I'll comment or whatever, the left has gone from being maybe liberal, progressive, to just being anti-right, anti-conservative. I can tell you what the left is against. I can't really tell you what they're for.
Mhm.
I can't even tell you what the Biden administration was trying to do, except hold on to power and to kind of punish conservatives. That's all I could get from the last 4 years with Biden in office or in his, in his crypt, while his little
The
minions were.
most salient policy of the Biden administration was an open border.
Yeah, it was the open border, and it's just like it just seemed punitive. But there wasn't any rhyme or reason to it, right? If you could say, well, he was trying to help the downtrodden and the poor, like, no, he let in gangsters, he let in human smugglers, he let in children without any,
Mhm.
adults with them, and they just kind of get lost into sex trafficking and all this stuff. Like, I don't know what the left is about. Like if and you encounter leftists not as often as before because it's everything's gotten so polarized. But I mean, what were we about again? Because I mean, back in when I was a youngin, it was about socialized medicine. Helping the poor, maybe having more of a welfare state, having a more compassionate policy overseas. There were things, but I feel like either the good stuff I feel like it got appropriated and absorbed into MAGA conservatism, just kind of helping the middle and working classes through
Yeah.
various policies. Uh, and I just don't know what's left. I mean, I don't know. Well, left of the left,
Yeah.
right?
I mean,
So,
in a way, it's not new. I mean, if you look at like the 60s, right? I think that a lot of it's essentially Marxism. I think what does the left want? Well, it wants exactly what they described to Patrick Bet David on that Jubilee episode, right? A classless, stateless, religionless society, right?
they
So
don't want to
they're
work. That's what they want. They don't
they
want to
don't
work.
want they don't want to work. And it's a stupid ideal, and it's impossible, and it's even evil in many respects. But they understand that to get to that place, I mean, it takes a lot of social unraveling. And so the 60s, not to go too deep down the rabbit hole, but if you kind of take a step back, the radical nature of the 60s and all the assassinations that took place during that time, it basically gave rise to a massive run of, at least at the top, at least in terms of presidencies, Republicans. Nixon won in 68. He won the biggest landslide in American history in 72. Watergate was a fabrication, a deep state op that took him down. I think that's easy to prove. So Carter won, but he only got one term. Then you had Reagan for two. Not to say the Bushes were great, but they would have 12 years pretty soon. It was really only, Clinton was a basically never got a plurality of the election, never got above 50%, and was a centrist Democrat to the max. Hillary Carey didn't get through, for example, the Gingrich Revolution, all of that. And, it wasn't until Obama. And Obama came in, and these radicals all came out of the woodwork again, like all the way back from
Yeah.
the 60s. And it was put on hyperdrive because he was a radical. That's easy to prove. And his mentors were radicals, and Saul Alinsky was a radical, rules for radicals. And so, Biden was just an apparatchik, obviously. They stole 2020. Truth and Trump, for 4 years, kind of, he did the best he could, but he didn't have control of the government at all. And
Yeah.
the Russia hoax hampered him. Everything hampered him. Everything. The Michael Flynn hampered him. All this kind of stuff. So now we're like in a radically different place from anywhere we've been certainly since Obama, where Trump has full control of the government. I mean, broadly speaking, a lot more. And you had people like Charlie Kirk, who were like really effective. And the youth were moving to the right in a very weird way. I mean, we are winning the culture war. It doesn't look like it sometimes, but there are very real wins, like in our column. And we got a long way to go. But I think the left feels like they're losing for the first time, at least since Obama. And so I think this is the only thing they've got left. Yeah. What are they for? I mean, I would like to know an answer to that question. And the only thing I can come up with is some warmed over version of Marxism or class, Marx, the class version of, cultural Marxism.
Cultural, yeah.
Yeah.
The
So, I
Gramsci
mean,
version.
so, at some point, how do we name this thing called the left, and how do we purge it? Because supposedly we're a society that allows for free speech. We have to tolerate ideas we don't like. There's freedom of the press, freedom of association. Interestingly, I'm finally reading the book by Jeremy Carl called The Unprotected Class.
Yeah, I have that.
Yeah. So, and part of what he talks about is how civil rights legislation actually took away the freedom to associate. In other words, freedom for whites to only associate with whites or blacks to only associate with blacks. So that's kind of interesting. But yeah, I mean, I'm curious. I mean, I like I said, I have some prescriptions. Maybe I'll lay those out. But I mean, we have to purge the left as much as possible within our constitutional framework from our society.
Well, okay, but to that point, and I agree with you, this is why I kind of asked the question, what is the left for anymore, or who is the left anymore? Because that's going to be the rebuttal, right? It's
Right.
like, okay, you're not happy with some of these things that are happening, or you don't like this or that politician. Um, but if we can't define the problem, and that's the thing, this problem is very hard to define
Yeah.
because it's not a popular movement anymore. Like the left seems to be kind of undergoing this evolution from being like a popular political movement into becoming like kind of this radicalized organization that, organizations, like you
Yeah.
have certain elites who have power and influence. You have, kind of deep state operatives who kind of just fly under the radar, but are still using government tools to kind of employ these things. You have these weird propagandists online. You got the dark web, more for the left. I mean, although it's ascribed to the right, but this kind of dark web, uh, you know, ecosystem.
Dude, working people don't have time for the dark web. I mean, come on.
Exactly. So, I mean, if you're normal, if like you're a normal person who's getting your degree, or you're going to school, or you got your job, or you're raising your family, I don't know where you fit into this kind of this smorgasbord of just kind of resentment
Yeah.
and
Well,
dissent.
let me make a proposal. All right,
Okay,
as
go for it.
I'm thinking about it. The left is the disease, but we can't in a free country we can't purge, we can't really cure that disease because we just can't eradicate it. So
Sure.
what we have to do is we have to treat the symptoms.
That's right.
All right. Okay. So let me lay out some symptoms. And actually Trump is doing this already. In cashless bail. Okay, that's a symptom of a philosophy of crime that is decidedly leftist, I would argue. Now, you could
Okay.
argue that it helps people against state overreach, so you could argue there's a conservative case for it. But things like cashless bail, go back to the North Carolina case, right, which was one of the things that would radicalize any of us. This guy should have been in jail. So we
Oh,
got to
yeah.
actually put criminals in jail, and so if that's through ending cashless bail or harsher sentences or building more prisons, whatever, Bukele this stuff up in here, right? Okay, so that's one, and then hey, turning point chapters everywhere. Do
Sure.
you know there used to be this thing called like college Republicans? I mean, like it's a joke. It's a punchline. Turning Point was going to be, I think, is going to be a legit thing. Like it's where we go to have Christian conservative values explained and defended. So I think that's going to happen. So that's a good thing. So and that gets into the rot of the public school system and the colleges where this stuff is fomented. So that's a major symptom antidote. In homelessness, again, Trump has put out an executive order to this degree. Like you know, you can't have this. It demoralizes cities, degrades cities, creates more crime, and it is only it's a leftist op at this point. Is how I feel about it because it's defended and promoted by the left. Antifa designated Antifa a terrorist organization. That's I think happened or gonna happen. I'm not sure that a president can do that unilaterally, but that again, you got to start like going after these criminal organizations. We got to figure out what's going on there. We have to make pornography illegal, okay? Because pornography degrades the mind, it debases the person. It makes one way more susceptible to violence of all kinds,
Yeah.
and it desensitizes to the person to the value of human life.
Well, all
So
these trans people are looking at a ton of porn. You
yeah,
know that. I mean, it's like
including
not only are they autistic, but they are consuming a ton of
and
porn,
apparently Tyler Robinson was looking at
furry
furry
stuff.
porn
Yeah.
that was like
Ugh.
openly with animals that were 8 years old. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, and by the way, remember the first guy they arrested, who is a known rabble rouser? George Zinn is his
Oh
last
yeah.
name.
But he was looking at child porn or something.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and so how did he realize instantly what was going on, and then volunteer to take attention away? That seems like he was creating a diversion. Uh,
Yeah. Right.
so
Right.
I mean, that's weird. And so, is there some like dark web, pornography connection between these people? Because that seems
Sure
Weird.
seems like it. Yeah.
This guy's a known rabble rouser. Like this
Yeah.
guy George Zinn. He's a known guy. Okay, anyway, but we have to get rid of this concept that free speech is pornography. Like we have to overturn that somehow. I don't know how to do it. I think we're getting some good starts with like Pornhub. You have to be 18, blah blah blah.
Yeah, the
But
age verification happening in a lot of states is kind of, I think it's helped a lot.
yeah. But more, I want more,
More of
right?
it, yeah, sure.
Because it's debasing and destabilizing and it doesn't produce the culture we want. So it's another way kids are getting radicalized. Then I think we need to defund anti-American speech.
Hmm.
Now I'm not saying we make it illegal. It's free. Just like you can lose your job though if you say terrible things online. Why are taxpayers funding these people in these universities to hate our country? So put the 1776 project or the commission or whatever, like put it on steroids now. Like we need a deep dive into these universities. You don't have the right to say whatever you want, and I'm sorry. I think we can prioritize and privilege pro-American speech. I know that's dangerous territory because now it's like, well, who determines? Well, I don't. At this point, let's try something else. Like at some point we got to lurch back the other way. So that's one. And then finally, this is obvious, but in welfare, welfare, as we talked about before, every dollar spent on it, I think, is worth, if you will, another 5 or 10 or 20 or 50 in cultural destabilization because it essentially has destroyed the family in many ways. And Charlie Kirk talked about that a lot. He talked about the destruction of the black family. This is it's part of what he was talking about when he was killed, about mass shootings and how mass shootings are cataloged and how you knew what a mass shooting was. But he would talk about the destabilization of the black family a lot, not just the black family. It's happened in the white family too. So those are all symptoms. So the approach to crime, the welfare state, the violence that we've coddled within Antifa, the pornographic culture, anti-Americanism, those are all symptoms of the left, not the right. So if we
Well,
can either defund it or stigmatize it, we got to start somewhere.
yeah, okay. Now, I think I think these ideas have been put forward in some form or fashion, but I'm going to present the devil's advocate here
Yeah.
because I think we need to be ready to kind of answer these points. So let's just say we do what you say. We put all the homeless people into rehab centers and mental institutions. Let's say that we start incarcerating criminals, especially repeat offenders, a lot more. Let's say we, end a lot of these kind of entitlement programs that seem to be perpetuating a lot of personal dysfunction, to put it in a nice way.
This is sounding great. Keep going.
Okay, but let's say we do all these things, and what you end up with, sure, cleaner streets, happier people, vibrant communities, but you're going to have jails, lots of prisons filled with mainly black and brown people. Okay, it's just not going to be a good look. You might say, well, but they're committing the crimes, and you're going to have a lot of, again, same class, black and brown people, poor people that are being denied opportunities, and they might even become homeless, and then that makes them liable to be put into some kind of institution or rehab center. And so, I mean, let's say you have this whole thing where we're just like constructing a bunch of more prisons, and it seems like certain minority groups are being targeted, and it seems just inequitable. I mean,
Yeah.
I think this is going to be the consequence of it. Do you think America? I mean, I would think, are Americans going to be willing to kind of stomach that? Just saying, okay, look, if we put some of this law and order stuff into play, and we really implement some of these institutions, are we okay with some disproportionate, disparate impact of offenders being kind of detained, incarcerated, imprisoned, even executed, and maybe denied like certain entitlements that they used to have? I mean, are we okay with that? Understanding that this is going to be the cost of what it takes to really reform our society and get to a better, healthier, more sustainable place?
Yeah.
Or do you think once they start seeing like, oh my gosh, these numbers look terrible, oh my gosh, everybody's just going to prison, oh my gosh, I mean, look at that poor family being broken apart because we're putting dad in jail because he stole some bread from the convenience store or whatever. Um, I don't know. I mean,
Yeah.
so
Well,
and I mean,
it's a great question, and
yeah.
you're right. It would
So what do
come
you
up.
say to that? I don't know.
I think I think I think that line of propaganda is not. I don't think anyone cares anymore. I really don't.
Okay.
At least not 51%. I think and this is my kind of hope that I have. I mean, I think that basically we're kind of done with the manipulation and the gaslighting and all of that. I think Trump's
Yeah, the toxic
election,
empathy and that kind of thing,
yeah,
right?
I
Weaponized
mean,
empathy.
I think the election of Trump alone signals that. And I think we just got a whole lot more radicalized. And by the way, not necessarily a bad word, just as you know, the Latin is just to the root, right? So
Yeah.
we're kind of getting back to kind of core principles, of like safe streets, safe public transportation, and I just don't think people care. I really don't. I think Charlotte, if Charlie Kirk wasn't murdered, we might still be talking about what happened to that poor girl in Charlotte. That was
Yeah,
so
that was
bad.
awful.
And I think there's a lot of people. I mean, I'll just say my wife as one example, who
Hmm.
is basically kind-hearted woman, definitely has gotten more conservative with age, but kind of wants to get along with everybody. Most of her friends online are, old college, high school, neighborhood people who are, all pretty much left to center. And man, she is canceling them left and right. Not your
Wow.
friend anymore, not your friend anymore, not your friend anymore. And I'm not interested in what you have to say. I'm not interested in the arguments. I think that we can't eradicate leftism. I think that we can, at best, form a culture, though. We can get back to stigma. Stigma's good. We have to
Yeah.
use the power of stigma to enforce behavioral change. And as I joked about on my previous episode, if I were king for a day, I'd said you got 5 years. 5 years. We're going to taper off the social welfare. You got 5 years to shape up, and at some point, I think we're going to have to do that for our financial sake alone. But um, hey, by the way, look, I'm totally in favor of arresting all the white, pink-haired Antifa types, right?
Yeah, right.
So, yeah, I think if we arrest all the Antifa types, and it'll all even out. So.
Well, I think you're right. I agree with that. I just think, and I wonder if Trump is thinking this way, just like let's wait until there's enough popular resentment to really just start acting. Because if you do it too early, before you have all this evidence
Yeah.
that we have some issues, then people are gonna like say, "Oh no, you're breaking up families." I mean, like with the immigration stuff, I guess that's where it begins. It's just okay, you
Yeah.
had this open border, bunch of people come in, and I mean, Trump right now is, I guess, focusing on violent criminals or people who are part of cartels. I like how he's bombing the boats too. By the way, keep that up. That's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
But no one's going to miss them. But once you start, and of course, like trying to retrieve these poor kids who are just unaccompanied minors who are just now being used and abused wherever in these corners of these random cities. That stuff I think is more popular and appealing. But when he starts having to like, you know, go to Home Depots or go to a farm or whatever, and these people seem to be okay. I mean, I actually haven't seen as much pushback as I thought I would, and maybe a lot of leftists thought they would.
I mean, the
I think,
polls still
yeah,
say a majority of Americans
it's
want
like,
them
oh, it's
all
okay.
gone.
They came
Yeah.
in illegally. I mean, I
Yeah.
don't care if they're working now. But here's the thing about that whole thing, though. Even if, oh, they just came here illegally, but everything else about them is legal, it's not, right?
Right.
Because to
Right.
get here
Right.
illegally, you're already
Right.
having to work with cartels, smugglers, coyotes, employers that like pay under the table. I mean, you're already complicit
Well,
with a number of other crimes
let
beyond just
me,
crossing the border.
yeah, let me tie all that in back to Turning Point. And
Sure.
I'm kind of jumping the gun of what we had said we would talk about, but you know, I think when I saw Erica Kirk speak last week, first of all, my heart broke for her.
Yeah.
Second of all, I was really impressed. I mean, just blown. I instantly tweeted out and texted my wife. I said the ship has an anchor, or the course is corrected, whatever shipping metaphor you want to use, like there's a future at TPUSA. It's a $200 million juggernaut. It's going to be fine because she's really smart and she's really tough and she's really driven and she has credibility and moral authority that no one has had since, I don't know, Jackie Kennedy. And, Jackie Kennedy became, and she's pawned off to Onassis, the billionaire and all that. So I think, I think first of all, it's good that she's Turning Point CEO. That's what he would have wanted, and he made that known. And she's very smart. You might have seen the clip going around where they did a show together, and someone said, "Who is more conservative, you or her?" And he said, "Her." And she kind of laughed and was like, "Yeah." He was like, "I'm the moderate here." So, but let me put a hypothetical before you. Let's say you're a Republican, okay, and you're running for, I don't know, senator in, say, Kentucky, or Tom Tillis, North Carolina, right? And you're going against, as a Republican, against 7 other Republicans in the primary. Who's the most powerful endorsement right now? Without question, other than maybe Trump, it's Erica Kirk. Because Turning Point USA's endorsement is going to be the most powerful political endorsement. Now, what kind of person do you think she's going to be endorsing? Can you imagine going into a meeting with her and not being a radicalized candidate in a primary? Like, forget it. Just turn around and walk back out. We're done with the moderates. We're done with the deep state apparatchiks. I think we're done with the rhinos. And if there was any human on earth that has ever been motivated to get back to true conservative principles and put those people in office who can be trusted to govern in that way, it is Erica Kirk. And I think there is going to be enormous power in the hands of Erica Kirk and Turning Point for exactly that, for cleaning out the rot within the conservative system that has been appropriated by the deep state or by the cultural left or whatever it is. So it's a long haul still, but I believe that the fact that most of us on the right feel deeply unrepresented, I think that's going to start to change even more. I mean, just as an example, Trump endorses Lindsey Graham. Does Erica Kirk endorse Lindsey Graham? I don't think so.
Well, I don't know. Did Charlie Kirk endorse these people? I don't even know.
I don't think he would have ever endorsed Charlie Kirk or Lindsey Graham. In fact, Charlie was such a good guy. He only hinted at what he would do. Like, for example, when Jody Ernst was thinking about not endorsing Hegseth or voting for Hegseth, he said, well, maybe we need to do a couple of Turning Point events in Iowa. And you know what she did? Charlie Kirk said that. And you know what she did? She got on board. She is pro Hegseth. And same with John Thune. Well, maybe we need to go to North Carolina and go to a couple of college campuses and have some rallies. He's very shrewd, very smart, but very kind. And I don't think she's going to be as kind. And there's something about conservative moms, right? That, man, you they see a threat to their children. And ultimately, I'm actually pretty inspired by her. I'm very hopeful. I think she's extremely smart. She's very tough. And I think she's going to be formidable. I think it's possible she could be on a ticket one of these days for some office. So I know I kind of jumped the gun, like I said, but
okay. Let's talk about Erica Kirk. I mean, I guess there's 2 things I openly wonder about. Okay, so don't attack me here.
No.
I mean, I think your point about she can probably. I think TPUSA has more, maybe moral credibility, moral capital. I don't know, political capital, if you want to call it that.
All of the above,
and they can probably have a much bigger influence on the composition of the Republican Party, the GOP, right? So, like you said, Trump just seems to kind of endorse anybody whose name he remembers. I mean, it doesn't seem too thought out. And so you get a lot of kind of clowns that pop up and he'll just say, oh, yeah, that one too, whatever. And, Charlie Kirk, I think, kind of understood the hierarchy and the pecking order. And he's like, we'll make it work, I guess.
I mean, when the time came, he he would show deference, right? Like he
Or
disagreed with some
maybe he
on
was having
things, but
conversations, just like,
yeah.
hey, no, you know. But and I don't think Erica Kirk seems a little bit more. I don't want to say serious because Charlie Kirk was serious as well, but maybe less compromising,
Well,
I
if
guess.
she wasn't serious Tuesday, a week ago Tuesday, she's a lot more serious now, right? So
Yeah, and
yeah,
so and probably understands that she has the she has the stature to kind of maybe make some of these decisions and kind of implement more muscular kind of endorsements, I guess. I don't know. But okay, even if you were to have the situation where the GOP is reconstituted, just through various endorsements and campaigning and get out the vote efforts that TPUSA is able to do, so that the GOP is not really what you have now, which is this kind of collection of various wings of conservatism, but really kind of this MAGA conservative Republican Party. Do you think that would effectively, like whoever becomes president next, which is maybe Vance or Rubio or Tulsi Gabbard, or to me, it looks like Vance is kind of
yeah,
leading the pack.
yeah.
But let's just say, okay, I mean, would that trickle down into all these? I mean, because is it just a representative and elected official thing, or is it like we just have these corrupt departments, the deep state, right? I mean, so even if you were to get your candidates in there, I mean, that's the issue with populism is that these candidates that we like that say the right things are all outsiders, and once they get into office or whatever, they don't seem to have much effect because they don't know how DC works, and they might not be wealthy enough to have those types of connections and all that kind of thing. So, I
Yeah.
mean, do you think that would make a serious dent, or would that turn anything if we were able to get our candidates into power and elected?
Well, I don't want to be negative, but understand that the left has been marching through the institutions, as has
That's
been
right.
said,
Yeah.
for a long time, right? So we got to march back, and we got to do it in double time. But it's going to take some time. Like I said, we'd won a bunch of Republican presidencies, but the deep state was kind of winning in other ways. So,
Yeah.
but again, the genius of Charlie Kirk was that he understood grassroots, voter registration and what county you have to win, what state to win the presidency, as well as kind of like the emotional, social, cultural arguments to make to appeal to 51% of the people, which is
Yeah.
how American politics works. And so, if that can be continued, not by one person, because there's no replacing Charlie Kirk, but if it can be continued by a handful of people, and by that might mean a couple of hundred handfuls of people, then yeah, I think it can make a difference. I really do. I mean, I really do think that America doesn't have to keep going this way. I mean, I think we can look back on this time as kind of dark days, days of cynicism, days where we didn't know what a boy and a girl were. Like, I think there's a future where we look back on that and we're like, what the heck? What were we thinking? I mean, there's a time when our kids might say to their kids, when I was a kid, Bruce Jenner, you know, and like that'll mean, they'll be like, what? People thought what? I mean, I think that's possible. I think the left, like we joke about the 80-20 issues, but like, I don't know how the left isn't 60-40 after this. Like, what do they have a 51% edge on?
Yeah.
And I think that we can take this moral capital that we have, the moral authority that we have, we can show the evil of the left is exposing itself. I mean, they can't help it. I mean, you
Yeah.
would think that after 2024 they would go, all right, guys, time to walk this back. They're not walking anything back. They're not walking anything back. So I'm going, I don't know. I mean, I just it's not a question of like whether we can win. That's not the question. I think it's a question of, do we have quality people? And that's where I think endorsements matter, and that's where I think no one is going to be able to walk into Turning Point's office in Arizona, handshake with Erica Kirk, sit down and have an eye to eye and bullcrap her.
Yeah.
Nobody. And I think that's a difference. I mean, I think that is a radical difference from where we were, say, I don't know, when Mitt Romney was running for president. That is a seismic shift to what we would consider to the right. And they are conservative. She is conservative. Charlie Kirk was conservative, like in all the right ways. You know,
Yeah.
um, it was a full spectrum Christian worldview implemented in the culture and through policy. So I'm actually pretty hopeful. I almost wish I could hit the fast forward button and see if I'm right. Because also, not for nothing, JD Vance was a very good friend. As if you listen to he hosted Charlie's show this week.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was oddly edited, but other than that, it was excellent. He was a very good friend to Charlie Kirk, and
Hmm.
something something changed in that guy for sure. And I think for the better because he's a believing Christian, right? He
Sure.
he can put two and two together, and I think, yeah, I mean, I think the future is pretty bright on that front because I think we can get down below the surface first.
Yeah. Okay. So let me say my controversial take on this, and maybe you can help me resolve it a little bit. And I included it so you can anticipate what I'm going to say.
Yeah.
So the thing with Erica Kirk, okay, because honestly, I didn't know who she was, and I've found out since then. Since this all happened, she's an accomplished person, right? So she has multiple degrees, and she was a beauty queen, and um, I think she was independently wealthy, and all this other stuff. She was a tiny bit older than Charlie. So here's the thing, okay? My heart goes out to her and her children, and obviously what has happened, and she's a grieving widow now. And but I have mixed feelings about her taking over TPUSA and kind of becoming this public figure, right? Because I
Yeah.
really didn't know her before then, and she's like, okay, that's Charlie's wife, and I figure he's going to take the hits and kind of keep her, and most influencers do that kind of thing. And then no, and I also understand that Charlie Kirk wanted Erica to take over in case he should ever pass away or something like that. But Erica is not Charlie, right? And and it's to me the whole kind of like her taking over kind of the whole business to me is like Casey DeSantis. Now I remember Ron DeSantis was running for president, and there was a lot of movement going on in Florida. And I think there were ideas like, oh well, Casey's a smart girl, and she'll talk for Ron, and and she's pretty, and she has 3 children that are exact same age as my children. I mean, I don't mind Casey DeSantis as a first governor lady, whatever, first lady of the state. But I guess okay. I'm trying to kind of look at analogies here. So Casey DeSantis seems to be kind of that same type that's married to a very prominent person, wants to have this type of, seems to be eager or at least interested in having this kind of profile. Same thing with Erica Kirk, who's now becoming this figure. You know, Everybody thought this was going to be Michelle Obama. And I know I'm going to piss people off when I say this, but one thing I actually kind of liked about Michelle Obama was that she never seemed to take the bait. Like they all begged her to run for president. They all begged her to be a leader, an icon of the Democrat Party. It's like, okay, well, everybody loved your husband, which might have been exaggerated, but you can do it, Michelle. You're like the next Oprah, And she just didn't seem interested. I mean, it turns out she didn't have much talent, and she was pretty offensive as a person, and did some crappy podcasts and Netflix
Right.
productions or whatever.
Right.
So going back to Erica Kirk, okay. So I mean, and I don't think I'm alone in this. I think it's just that I know these people are very qualified, like Erica Kirk,
Yeah.
Casey DeSantis, and there may be some others.
How about
I just
Hillary
wonder.
Clinton?
It just feels a little weird. It feels a little wrong when they just kind of take over like this and almost kind of take their husband or take advantage of their husband's kind of prominence to make a career of their own. Am I just being a toxic male here, or is there something to it? Is there something to kind of like alleviate this feeling?
No, no. I think it's a fair question to ask. I think it's an intuitive question. I think there's a difference between being thrust into a place that you would have happily had your husband serve
Okay.
and and perhaps being an opportunist. You left Hillary Clinton out of that conversation.
Yeah, well, I know. I mean,
That's
she's
a
awful
given, I
for
guess.
also, but it's the same story. That's right. She
Yeah.
took it. She wanted to be a politician.
Or maybe Eleanor Roosevelt back in the day, before,
Yeah.
But I don't know. No, I don't think it's equivalent because I think that she would have, I think that actually, they spoke about Ephesians 5. She quoted Ephesians 5, and that's the text about marriage where it says that the woman submits to the husband and the husband serves as Christ served the church. This was her quote in her speech. The husband served the wife as Christ served the church, meaning he may have to die for her. And she point blank said that's what he did for our family. He died for our family, like Christ died for the church. So I think though that she understands Ephesians 5, and she would have been glad to sort of let him lead the family and the business in maybe the White House one day, and she would be glad to play that supporting role. But circumstances change. The world changed. And whereas, DeSantis feels opportunistic, it feels kind of like nepotism, like handing off the reins.
Yeah.
That's I don't think that's what this is. I mean, the guy was killed. So I just don't feel like it's, I think that the question really is, does she have what it takes? And the board, not only are they, honoring Charlie's dying wish, but the board, I think, has evaluated and they weighed and measured, and she's fine. She's good to go. I kind of have, I put out on Twitter, I think it's going to be a Vance Kirk ticket in 2028. I think that's possible. I know that
Well,
sounds crazy.
you could have said that for Charlie too, right? It's
Yeah.
like,
Oh yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
that's the, I guess, the tragic part. It's like, well, I mean, it could have been Charlie Kirk, or now it might be
I
Erica
think
Kirk.
that I think Charlie would have been a 36 guy myself. He would have
Yeah.
tried, it would have been a Vance Rubio deal. Anyway, I don't know. I I I I hear what you're saying, and I think that conservatives want to be, we want to be a meritocracy. I think that's really what this is about, right? And Charlie
Yeah.
talked about this all the
Pay your
time.
dues. That's right.
Yeah, pay your dues. You're, meritocracy. You don't just get to inherit a spot. I think it's a little bit of a different situation. I think he married a really bright woman who's really tough, and again, who's going to go against her, right? I mean, there's a crass element to politics. I mean, politics is dirty business. Sometimes you have to do what it takes to win, to impose your will. And she she wouldn't trade this for anything, but she's got, again, moral authority. So I don't think you should be cynical about her. I don't. Give her a shot. Come on, August, give her a shot.
Okay, I will. Well, actually, it helped to know kind of like her resume, like that she is that
Yeah,
accomplished. Like, okay, this makes more sense. And like you said, I mean, there's a difference between your husband just kind of leaving office and leaving it open for you, and then or like a Hillary Clinton or a Casey
yeah.
DeSantis, and then
I mean,
versus
look,
like your husband,
yeah.
being assassinated.
I mean, it would obviously we are all kind of secretly hoping it would have been Candace Owens, but
Well, she was at TPUSA for a time, and I mean, Charlie Kirk was always pretty nice about her, even though she would just say the dumbest things and get in trouble all the time.
right, he was so
Uh,
kind. Honestly, like my respect for him has gone up this week, given everything she has said. She's speaking for the dead. She's now saying he was almost going to convert to Catholicism, and I don't know, maybe, but I don't think that's something you say a week after he died. I think
Boy, and Erica Kirk is Catholic too, right?
I I had heard that. I don't know. I don't know, and maybe
Another
he
point in her
was, but
favor. So
well, I mean,
uh,
the Catholics are kind of taking over. Yeah, I mean, Vance.
they are, well, that a certain kind of Catholic, right?
Right, right.
Um, okay, but before we wrap up, because yeah, we're kind of hitting our hour. I got to ask you, and I know you're beat up about this. Um, Stupid Jimmy Kimmel. So Jimmy Kimmel gets fired or whatever. He just kind of blares out a falsehood. Oh, okay, yeah, the guy was MAGA, and he wasn't MAGA. Okay, stop it. And I don't know. I guess I'm kind of curious about. I don't think they're going to get anywhere with the whole. Oh, you're using cancel culture and it's just free speech. I
Mm.
think all that stuff's weak sauce, but I don't know. Did you have any thoughts on that? I mean, besides being super sad that your favorite late night comedian
And
is
I
not going to.
I haven't watched late night since Jay Leno was doing headlines in like the late '90s, like the mid '90s. You know,
Yeah,
like
I
I
know. I mean,
remember,
like Jay Leno was pretty good. Yeah, some of the
like literally the OJ trial was like the last time I watched late night talk show. So I'm out of the loop. I mean, he's obviously an apparatchik of the deep state, you know, of the professional left.
yeah,
He's a propagandist. I mean, I really want to see. I mean, I know the threat to ABC's license was mentioned, and then he was fired that day. We this has to have some teeth. Like the public airwaves cannot be to promote leftism, and Trump has talked about it, but we need to see some action here because
yeah,
you know you can't have a country where 97% of the coverage of a president is negative on public airwaves. Those are our it doesn't serve the public interest. You cannot have leftist media. You can't. You know, you can have leftist MSNBC or now or whatever. You can have leftist CNN because that's cable. You know, we pay for that. That's fine. It's all is fair in love and war, but not on our public airwaves. We have to get back. We have to insist that conservatives are not the cultural pariah anymore. That we're on the right side of a lot of issues. And so I would love to see this and others, but this as a way to really have a conversation with ABC and NBC and CBS and PBS about what kind of content they need to be producing. Because
yeah,
damn it, there's nothing wrong with America. And I'm sick of it being implied and suggested and assumed and presupposed in all of the media. I'm just sick of it. So I don't watch them. That's my protest, you know.
yeah.
But
Well,
a
most
lot of
people
normies
don't. I
do.
mean,
I mean, most people. I mean, yeah. I mean, the guy had like 150,000 people in the quote unquote key demo, which is like nothing. So I
yeah.
don't even know how influential he was, but I do think people watched on YouTube and stuff like that. So I mean, it's a win. It's a small win. I mean, I'm like, great, but like I want more. I mean, like I always want more. So, you know.
Well, I thought it was interesting that the FCC guy, I forgot
Oh,
his name, but kind of
James
went
Charles.
on. I think he was a Benny Johnson, where he
Right.
was talking about, look, these are public airwaves. These contracts go back decades, and the understanding is that these are not propaganda outlets, or they're not supposed to be. They're supposed to serve the common interest and have some semblance of balance. And when you have a guy just spewing out just total falsehoods and really kind of riling up a certain segment of the population, um, then you're wondering, like, well, why do they have this monopoly? Why do they get to have this channel and this license, right?
Yeah.
And people are clutching their pearls and all this free speech stuff. Like you said, just about pretty much everything else. It's like I don't think people care anymore. you know, um, and I
Yeah.
mean, because too much crap has happened, and so we can't get squeamish and uncomfortable and talk in esoteric terms about what is free speech and what are we entitled to, and is cancel culture acceptable when the right does it?
Right.
Um, okay, I agree with you. I mean, I hope to see more of it. I mean, I think, part of me thinks, you know, it was a lot like Colbert. I think this was more of a pretext than anything. Like these shows are
Yeah.
overproduced. They cost a
Right.
lot of money. I
Right.
don't
Right.
think they have a big audience.
Right.
And so this was just a pretty convenient pretext. Like, well, look at him go nuts about Charlie Kirk. That was going to happen. They were probably waiting for it, and it happened. And it's like, okay, yeah, Jimmy, yeah, this is not going to work. And I wouldn't be surprised if business decisions or anything like that kind of factored into this. I just hope to see more of it, honestly, because again, it's like it'd be nice to have TV that I can actually watch instead of this weird crap that,
Yeah.
again, like I find it sickening and
Well,
just
like
awful.
Biden was the greatest gift to comedy ever.
Yeah,
And yet you can't make jokes about him? Are you kidding me? I mean, so it just they again, it's moral authority, right? It's
yeah,
moral credibility. They have none. The left has none. And ultimately that there's going to be a price to pay. Sadly in America, it kind of comes down to Republican and Democrat. Like at the end of the day, like all of our talk kind of comes down to two parties and the use of force. Um, I mean, you have to kind of change the culture to get one of those parties to do more and win elections and stuff like that. But it is what it is, and I feel pretty good about like where we're at. I think Charlie Kirk understood that. I think Charlie Kirk understood that it's a two-party system. It's always going to be a two-party system. You got to win. You got to pick good people. You got to endorse the right people. You got to fight hard. You got to win, and then you do your thing. And then and your culture informs the kind of person you get, and da 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 da. And that's. I mean, I guess if there's a takeaway, I mean, that's kind of my hope is that Charlie Kirk ushered in a new paradigm of conservatism, not the Rush Limbaugh paradigm. God bless him, he's exactly what we needed at the time. But the paradigm has shifted. The paradigm now is that Christ is actually inevitable, that Christian truth is inevitable. We live in God's world. He has spoken through his word, and the grace necessary for our fallen condition, but the law necessary for our fallen condition, that's part of our social, political, cultural conversations. You just can't divorce it. And I think he shifted that Overton window in such a way that it's going to be hard for someone to follow him without doing the same. And I think if you look at the influencers, the Matt Walshes, all the Daily Wire people, we'll make the Shapiro exception here. But if you look at the influencers, I mean, we did our top 24 countdown, right?
Yeah,
I
didn't
mean,
Kirk win on your side?
he did win on my side. And,
yeah, he was close for me too. I think there was like a semifinal, and like I think Walsh edged him out.
Yeah, that was kind of an unfair pitting, and I'd be happy with Walsh because he was my number two too. So yeah, it was tough, but I mean, you look at so many of the people on that list, and that's where they're at. So I think there's been a major shift in that way, and I just want to keep it going. So yeah.
I think we'll end on that hopeful note. I agree with you. And wrap things up here. As always, thank you, Evan, for a great conversation. And thank you, listeners, for tuning in. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the Everyman on Substack, everymancommentary.substack.com, as well as this podcast, which can be found on Apple and Spotify. And you can now even find us on YouTube, though we're still putting that together. These are dark times, and we're doing what we can to make sense of all of it, and we're trying to do our part to kind of help this movement go along. So we appreciate all your support. So in spite of all the bad news, there's things to be hopeful for, and I hope that you all have a wonderful week, spend some quality time with friends and family, and keep the faith.